was uni. I maybe partied it a bit hard in my second year. May have slightly, scuppered my own opportunities. I'm a lifelong insomniac, so I'm just not gonna, nothing's gonna change now. So yeah, that really does drive me to keep going, because I think, do you know what? You got that wrong, and we're going to go rate them, and we're going to do selfies in them, and then we're going to go. Do you know what? I actually hate it.
Hello, hello, and welcome to But Is It Legal? This is a podcast from TBD Marketing. I'm your host, Simon Marshall. I'm always your host. You should probably know that by now anyway, so that's fine. Today, I'm joined by the brilliant Heledd Wyn. Heledd, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what you do in your day job?
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited, actually. So I'm a solicitor. I'm a private client solicitor, which is a bit of a catch-all for all sorts of things, but specialise in all sorts of things: asset protection, long-term care, court protection, mental capacity, basically individuals with money, with problems, and in a bit of a problem-solving kind of space.
And tell me a bit about how did you get into the law in the first place? Tell me about that. Whenever you first came across it, early career or as a teenager, what was the thinking?
Only child, quite argumentative, probably, starting point. Then went, yeah, do you know what? Sounds like a great career. Become a lawyer, because that's what you can do, isn't it? And yeah, and then I had a bit of a wobble. I was like, oh, maybe I'll become a hairdresser. But then no, I stuck with it. Did the whole, came to Bristol to uni. Then actually genuinely fell out of love with the law completely. And when that is it, I am going to have to find something else to do. And then realised I don't actually know what else I'm going to do. So I may as well qualify as a solicitor, because then I can sort of think about it. And here I am, some
When
decades
was the
later.
wobble? Was that at university or when you were already
Um,
working as a lawyer? Or what was that?
it was uni. I maybe partied it a bit hard in my second year, and realised that partying a bit hard wasn't really compatible with sort of magic circle law firms. And Bristol, God love them. Yeah, that's where they were pushing people. So I was like, may have slightly, scuppered my own opportunities. So maybe I should go and find something else to do.
My office literally overlooks the law faculty at the Wills Tower, so I can see those students. And I sometimes wonder if they're having enough fun. Actually, I look out and see they look very sober and serious all the time, and I just think, come on, let's have a bit more fun. If your first years, especially as well.
Exactly.
When you were studying it though, what was the area that kind of leapt out at you most? What did you enjoy when you were studying like the technical kind of legal stuff as a student?
Really enjoyed family law, because that's really fascinating. And evidence, like a real nerd, real legal nerd. But family law was great because it covered all sorts. It covered everything from like divorces to gender reassignment to all sorts of things in between. And actually, really interesting kind of space. And we had some really great lecturers teaching us at that point. So it was genuinely probably that probably saved me in the end. I thought, actually, people are quite interesting. People's problems are quite interesting. Contracts, less so.
Yeah, I think it's probably we didn't do family law on my course. It was a bit different when I did law, but I did it in when I was on my year out in France. We did international private, and I really
Mhm.
flipping loved it when we did international private law,
Yeah,
cross-border stuff, and what was the angle of people who'd taken off at going skiing and which country they landed in, because it mattered to their
yeah.
testamentary succession. I love that stuff, right? Really good fun as well. And tell me a bit about this recent move then, because you've moved from big law down to a bit more of a boutique firm. Can you
I
tell us a bit about
have.
that?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, done the big law stuff, which is great. All power to the elbow. I haven't got a problem with it. For me, it's about actually people. Again, it's about the people thing. And I was getting a bit lost in the corporate speak. So going back to a boutique firm, which means I can really sort of be the person on the ground working with clients, working with individuals, rather than multiple layers of before you even get to me. Because actually, you need me, not the office, not the necessarily anything else. You need to actually be able to talk to me. So I wanted to be in a position where I can go actually pick the phone and actually I'm on the end of it. So rather than going through call centers and that sort of stuff, because I think if you're in private client work, you want to be talking to people. You don't want to be sort of handed around, because it's usually a bit of a distress purchase. So that was the move, to be personal.
What do you think you're going to miss most about kind of the big door element?
Probably the fact there's people for everything.
Yeah.
So you're back in that space of going, actually, sort of cook, bottle washer, sweeper upper, kind of thing, rather than, can you just do that for me? Because there's a whole function for it. Actually having to do everything. So there are obviously sides to it that are less glamorous, but I think on balance, for the client facing stuff, it's got to be the right answer for me.
Tell me about the kinds of clients that you'd work for then on a day-to-day basis. What are they? Can you describe them in terms, not names, but I'm thinking more
Yeah,
about the
secrets.
kind of people you work for. Are you really honed in on a certain?
I think I'm quite nosy. I'm like, I'm happy to try anybody. I think probably realistically, given I'm a solicitor and I'm working in the law, and we're all about the billable hours and the money and this and that. It's probably people who have money, who are then seeing for some reason that it's either going in the wrong direction or worried about going in the wrong direction.
Mhm.
But there's no upper or lower limit. You've got people going, oh, I've inherited wealth, I want to make sure it goes down the right line in the family, or I've built up a business and I don't know what to do with it, I want to make sure my kids are looked after, or even, actually, my kids are fine, my kids have more than enough money, I want to now look to do philanthropy. That's a big piece, which is really nice. Then also the other side of the spectrum is people who find themselves in a bit of crisis, where, hang on, dad's at a fall, dad's in hospital, dad's now got to pay £2,000 a week in care fees. Where on earth do I begin? So it's really varied, which is lovely. And I think no two individuals are the same. No 2 days are the same. Everybody says that, but generally,
Mm.
you can go from something completely technical and very money focused, and sorting out businesses, to being on being in a hospital room on a Friday afternoon, fighting for your client's rights to get funding, to get them home. And I have done both.
I like that diversity of kind of the client base and that ability to be flexible over it. Why do you think it is that clients turn to you in particular? What is it that makes them instruct you?
Why do people instruct me? I'm not an obvious choice. I think people in distress sort of think, oh, solicitor's not your first port of call, so they'll usually sort of go to friends, family, online, and then somebody will go, have you thought about talking to a lawyer? And at that point, I can go, do you know what? Actually, I might be able to help you. There's loads of stuff in the toolkit, and there are loads of people I know who are also going to be part of your gang and your toolkit. And what's brilliant about the job I do is that it can really start working with multiple professionals, because you end up with one person going, oh my god, this is just horrendous, I found myself in this complete state, and I go, okay, that's fine, don't worry, I've got, I know a social worker, or I know a financial advisor, or I know an occupational therapist who's also an interior designer, which is a fantastic sort of combo of job. But being able to just solve that problem, I always think of a bit like Mary Poppins got a carpet bag, and what comes out the carpet bag of stuff to help people. So it's problem solving. So yeah, I don't know. People pick me because I'm quite tenacious, probably, at getting stuff sorted, because
And
I
well
put
connected by the sounds of it as well.
working on it, because I think actually it's so much easier if you try and do it with other people. Try, being that sort of, oh, it's just me, I'm very important. I'm not very important. I am just one facet of a very complicated set of circumstances. And actually phoning a friend, bringing a friend in, brilliant, love it.
I guess that begs the question about how those people find you in the first place. Does it come mainly through word of mouth recommendation, or how do you get on their radar?
There's two key ways. One is word of mouth.
Yeah.
I'm really fortunate. Bristol's a really smashing, fabulous, collaborative community. And
Mhm.
secondly, it's got to be LinkedIn. And it's been an enormous toolkit for the job, to just actually find people and know they're out there, and go, oh, you're really interesting, can I just learn a bit more about you? And it's sort of bite-sized snippets about people, and then you go, they look like a good egg, I might use them for something, or might ask them a question, and then you
Mhm.
really get a feel for, actually, this person's fantastic. they are so now my go-to person. So yeah, it's literal word of mouth, on word on the street, coffee shops, or LinkedIn word of mouth, which I think is equally as important.
Seems to me that in that area in private client, private wealth as well, that geography still plays quite a big role in relation to where people get instructed. I mean, it's a bit different post-pandemic, but is that a fair observation? Would you say you're, like of Bristol and work for people who are of Bristol, as it were, as well?
Absolutely, I would. I sort of really found that people want to know that you are in Bristol, you know Bristol, you understand
Mhm.
Bristol, that you know whether you know where, you've got, the quirks and the features of Bristol, and that people go, oh, that's great, you're one of us. So I've had clients going, oh, I'm terribly sorry, I'm not going to come and see you, because it's actually quite hard to get to your office, because you're a mile and a half down the road, and and you try to drive around Bristol recently, you'll know that's a real problem.
True.
So I sort of become nomadic. So I'm like, actually, do you know what, guys? Where are you? I know where you are. I know how to get to you. I can probably walk to you quicker than I can drive to you. So if you're
Mhm.
willing to meet sort of halfway, or meet in a coffee shop, we can be much more flexible on that. And so yeah, I would say weirdly, it is really geographic. I'm fine. I'll do anything. I mean, online, in person, wherever. Have been known to meet clients in pubs, which was an interesting experience. But yeah, I think it's that patch, that sense of belonging, I think, is really important, which perhaps isn't there in other fields.
What's the drive that's there to do what you do? What is it that kind of makes you jump out of bed each morning?
Problem solving, and just like getting people's lives a bit better, and going, do you know what, I hate it when people go, you can't do that, or they just talk complete nonsense. And I go, well, if it was criminal law, you'd be up in arms, wouldn't you? If somebody said, oh, this person's get away with it because, just can't be bothered to deal with it, or I can't be bothered to know what the law is. People would be really cross. And I think that in the area of law I work in, private wealth, private client, actually there's a whole load of stuff out there that I can sit and go, you do realize you're not allowed to do that, and I am going to stand up for those rights. And so yeah, that really does drive me to keep going, because I think, do you know what, you got that wrong, I'm going to tell you where you go wrong, and that's my client in a better position.
Just thinking away from kind of your practice, as it were, and a bit towards, um, the society kind of level for a minute as well. There's a lot of talk in some of my other clients about advice poverty, like the people who need kind of access to that advice. I'm not thinking about legal aid here, but just the idea of kind of good financial advice, good kind of wealth planning advice, as it were, as well. Any thoughts on anything that we can do to kind of bridge that gap, or how people go about bridging that gap when they're a young person and they're first venturing out into the corporate world?
It is awful.
Mm,
I mean, I say, when I was training, I did do legal aid work, did do legal aid family work, and you do realise there are people out there who would be just in an awful position if there
mm,
hadn't been that funding. Now that's been slashed beyond all recognition. So it is that, how do we get out there? We've got things like law centres, we've got online, and you think this is great. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff online, but is it decent? Is it valuable? And I think it's so complicated. There has to be a nuanced response to it, because you can go, well, I think I've found the answer to what I want, but it might be there's a particular issue. So there's got to be room for pro bono. There's got to be room for us being out there and going, do you know what, I can do something that can help, even what might take me 10 minutes might save somebody hours and hours and days of angst. So giving back has to be certainly part of what we do, I think.
Is that something you think you're going to find easier to do now that you've made the move to the kind of smaller, the boutique firm, or
I think so. Yeah.
yeah,
I think that I am more independent and more flexible, and yeah, do a lot of stuff. Do a lot of stuff. And so oddly, I go back to the uni and do lots of stuff with the students, and mentoring and careers fairs, and all that sort of stuff. And go, no, there is life outside big corporate. It does exist, and it's really nice sort of seeing these students come through, because like there are people who are a bit like, I don't necessarily want to go and write contracts about cranes for the next 50 years of my career. What else is out there? So definitely looking at giving back in that sense. And yeah, I think there's loads of ways we can give back, and it's really nice to be able to do so.
I'd encouraged daughter of a friend a while ago to go and look at some of the options, just to cross them off as well. I said, "Look, if you're really into this kind of family stuff, just go and work, as a placement for the council for a bit. Go and watch how family law works at the sharp end of things. Go and see where it's there as well." And it's really interesting that I don't think that concept appeals comes up for a lot of people. They're not advised to go and cross off the things that they don't want to do as well. I think it's just as important. The law is it's not just one profession, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's many professions masquerading under one regulator. And that's the challenge we've got is we don't know how to talk to, do you want to be a criminal lawyer? Do you want to be a family lawyer? Do you want to be, like you said, a construction lawyer or an infrastructure lawyer and, whatever. So I think we could do better in that area to explain to people. It's okay to go and have a play around and find out what it is that you really want to do.
I love the idea of going and not liking something. Like it's really
Yeah.
valuable. So yeah, why not? Go, do you know what? I actually hate it. It's fine. I had that moment because I spent, as I used to do some family work when I was sort of trainee, and I did. One day I went to court and I had 5 cases, and it was all children cases, and it was all the week before Christmas, and it was all who is going to have small child on Christmas Day. And I went, 5 times I've had this conversation today, and that's 5 times parents have just not sorted their lives out to put their child at the front of this. And I went, no more. I am not doing this. I will work in a different area. But it's been hugely valuable experience to understand that, to go, actually, people get so hung up on things, and they get so hung up on what they think's right, they completely forget what they're there for.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's
I'm a big fan of that.
important lessons to learn. If you were to think about your professional values and maybe describe them in 2 or 3 adjectives, what would they be? How would you describe yourself?
Oh, there's a challenge. Um, Pragmatic,
Right.
open-minded, and probably technical. Because we're lawyers, and that's ultimately what we do. Our power, the power we have, is in words, and putting those words together in a way that makes sense and makes difference and gets people to do what they're supposed to do. And knowing what that rule book is what we're about. So knowing what the rule book is and applying it and using those words, I think that's probably the big thing.
And thank you for that. Those are really great answers. How do you see your role or the area in which you're working kind of evolving over the next 3 years, 5 years? Maybe in terms of your personal goals or in terms of, you know, technical things that take place or how we're going to work. Any thoughts on the future of family law?
I think we're just going to see so many people finding themselves needing help, because we've got government changing things right, left, and centre, throwing financial sort of bombs in that we then have to deal with. People then realizing that we've got aging population. We've got
Hmm.
both ends of the spectrum. We've got aging parents who are not necessarily aging well, and they're going into sort of going to care. Then we've got children who've got learning difficulties, learning disabilities. You've got the sandwich generation in the middle, all trying to compete with this. And where I think it's, people sort of think, oh, do you know what, the state's there to help me, the state's there to help me do things, it'll be all right, we've got this lovely fluffy sort of state support network. Well, trust me, when people find themselves in need of it, it's fairly damaged, it's fairly broken. We know why. But actually, if you find yourself in a crisis and you're looking to that support, it's not always there. So there is space for that work that we can do to tell people, these are your rights, this is how you get them, this is how they're applied, this is what you're entitled to, because the law says, let's go and get it. Because I'm very sorry we have austerity, I'm very sorry there are budgetary constraints, but the law says you're entitled to X, Y, and Z. Let's go get it.
Any thoughts on whether or not maybe financial education or that kind of understanding, from 16 to 25 is going to improve over the next years so that people maybe can for the future a bit better? Any thoughts on that?
I would love that. That'd be great. Just a bit of
Mm,
just like anything to just go, do you know what? Life's quite complicated. Understanding things like the impact of compound interest, and getting on housing ladders early if you can, or what that looks like, and all that sort of stuff. That actually, the earlier you start it, the better it is.
yeah.
And Yeah, I would love more education on that. And I think, I'd be quite happy to sort of learn more. But I think if you're leaving school or you're going into the world of work, there just needs to be a bit more sense and practicalities about what this means. It's very boring. Nobody wants to think about pensions and all that sort of stuff. But the impact down the line is massive.
Yeah.
Understanding that, and forewarned is forearmed, isn't it? Yes.
Now for the important stuff. Tell me a bit. We're thinking, you and I think about like trying to categorize each of Bristol's 7,000 coffee shops.
We are.
Tell everyone a bit about that and what our plan is, what we're trying to achieve.
We are going to achieve. So Bristol's brilliant for having a phenomenal selection of independent coffee shops.
Mm.
And so our plan is we're going to go visit them, and we're going to go rate them, and we're going to do selfies in them, and then we're going to go, this is just great. Just look, we just sit here and drink coffee. But I think my view is I spend a lot of time in coffee shops. Anybody who knows me knows that. But I will always try and go for the independents because I think they're trying their best. They're doing something, and if we can all help each other, we're a bit of an infrastructure. So yeah, I'm so up for this.
Why are you worried about becoming over caffeinated as a result of this kind of expedition that we're going on here? Are we limiting ourselves to the amount of cafes we're going to visit on a monthly basis?
I'm a lifelong insomniac, so I'm just not gonna, nothing's gonna change now. So caffeine or no caffeine, what are you gonna do?
And if you were to recommend like one or two, just off the top of your head, that we should start out with in terms of our kind of
Oh,
visits, where are we starting?
it's got to be Spicer and Cole, isn't it?
Mm.
It's the benchmark, isn't it? We love Spicer and Cole, all of them. They're all fantastic. I were sort of pre move. I used to the Spicer and Cole Queen Square used to be called Meeting Room 7 because that's where we just used to move in there, and so we'd have it in our diaries. Meeting Room 7. So people are like, oh god, she's gone out again.
I like it as a venue. I just think that it's not too many places that pull off that special trick of having great coffee and great food, and you can still get a table for the most time as well, right? So
I know.
not all the time; it's very busy at times as well. I think Bristol's also got a bit of heritage of exporting coffee brands, nationwide from here as well. We've seen loungers go big. Boston Tea Party clearly doing very well for itself as well, and Spicer and Cole has got the potential to do the same as well. We've got a few of them around the
Yeah.
city. I'm a big fan of getting into that as well. I assume that you're willing to take other people along for the ride.
I will take anybody along for the ride as long as they're willing to come with me and help me rate my coffee and have a selfie. Come on in.
If they were going to order you a coffee, what is it they should already know that you want to tell us about your coffee? What are they going to be ordering you?
It's nice and straightforward. Black Americano. There you go.
I'm absolutely amazed at that.
Yeah.
Answers. Any advice for people who are thinking about, wanting to have a kind of career where they make a difference and at the same time get to kind of preserve their values? I'd love to hear a bit about that. Like, what's your advice to maybe your younger self about how to stay true to what's important to you?
Yeah. I think it's just be open to suggestions, open to ideas, and maybe just dig around a bit under the bonnet of what that job looks like. As I say, it was said earlier on, it's all about words, isn't it? And if you sit there and go, oh, it's just wills and dead people, people are just gonna, even my clients go, oh, it's just very boring. It's not. It's private clients, private wealth, it's family, it's buzzwords, get the words right, are really important. I didn't know anything about it until I fell into it when I was training, and I fell into it because I shared a room with somebody who did the litigation, and I got everything else. And go and ask. There's a whole community out there of people who are actually really keen to help and support. And I do mentoring via the uni, and I'm online, and I'm really happy to talk to people, and people approach me, and I'm sure loads of other people are too, because we know it's tough. We know it's tough to get out there. The statistics on like people getting into law and going into degrees and stuff is just horrendous. And fundamentally, lawyers are pretty much, every lawyer I've ever met is actually fundamentally a decent person underneath
Yeah.
it all. So don't be afraid of just poking people and saying, can I have a chat? Can I buy you a coffee?
think that's good advice. Okay, listen, Hello, thank you so much for this time today. I know you're incredibly busy in the new role and kind of branching out and trying to, use your network as it were again. So making half an hour of us to not be sniffed at. If you're watching today and you've enjoyed today's edition, please could you give Heledd a follow on LinkedIn? It's well worth it, I promise you. If the nothing else, you're going to find out what the best coffee shops are in Bristol over the next few months, and maybe we'll eat the odd cake as we go along as well. I won't bore us all with a black Americano. We will have oats, flat whites in there as well, I promise. Okay. And then, yeah, if you have enjoyed today's edition, then please share it with a friend. And if you really like what you've seen in this series of podcasts as well, then give us a subscription. Heledd, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.